is going to be so fun. Thank you, Carolyn, and thank you, RizeCon, Mr. Ryan Harris, all that you guys do to make this happen. I commented earlier that I believe that Ryan Harris has done more as one individual for the economy in East Idaho than probably anyone else over the last 5 years. And I mean that when I say that, because connections are where everything happens, aren't they? In 2019, I came here to this event, and I got sat on the front row, probably I think right there, and I got sat next to a banker. And I was kind of disappointed in that, you know? The fact is, I'm an entrepreneur that likes to start something from scratch, something that's never been proven before. And bankers hate things that aren't proven, don't they? They want to take bets that they know will work. And everything I do, there's a solid shot it's not going to turn out. So, lo and behold, we had a little time. Ryan got us together. He did his, circle you up and make you say things on a 2-minute window and you can't go over kind of thing. And I'm next to this banker going, man, Ryan, this is awful. This is not my place. Well, come to find out, he knew my family. My parents grew up in Blackfoot, Idaho. He knew my family, and so we at least made that connection. And I thought, that's kind of cool that I got to know someone that knew my parents when they were in high school. And he told me some stories. I learned some things about my parents I didn't know yet. And I was like, wow, this guy's actually kind of cool. About 3 months later, my education technology company, Stukent, acquired a financial literacy simulation. And while we'd never taken a bank loan in our, at that point, 6 years in business, all of a sudden I needed someone from the banking industry to come and talk to us in our business about what a financial literacy simulation should look like. So I called my friend, the CEO of Idaho Central Credit Union at the time was Kent Oram. And Kent came up to Idaho Falls, saw our simulation, and he ended up dedicating millions of dollars to pay for every student in the state of Idaho to use the Stukent financial literacy simulation. Such a neat experience that came, and a connection that came from being sat at a table next to someone that I didn't think I would ever plan to do business with. And I want you to take a second now with that in mind and look to your right. Look to the person at your right. Just whisper this in their ear, because they're going to be looking at the person to their right and say, you might make me millions. Okay? You don't know it yet. What will come of these relationships today? And they won't all make you millions. But taking the time, I commend you for taking the time to get away from your desk, away from your smartphone, put it down if you're on it, and actually to engage with the people that are here. Because the people that are here, they're builders. They're people that want to make Idaho even better than the great state that it already is. So today, I'm talking about building businesses, high-growth businesses in Idaho. And I have some things that I've experienced and can share, and I've seen other businesses that build across the nation, not just Idaho. And some of these principles that I'll teach and share, they apply outside of Idaho. But there are some very special things about Idaho that I hope I can bring into it from my experience choosing to stay in Idaho. When I built Stukent, we raised just shy of $1 million in seed funding. And one of the questions that investors would ask is, are you sure you don't need to go to the Silicon Slopes? Are you sure you don't need to have a second round of VC money and go get it out of the Bay Area? We would go to professor conferences selling our software and education technology to these professors. And they'd ask, where are you guys based out of? Expecting Boston, like so much of edtech is out of Boston. And we'd say Idaho. And they'd always look at us and go, potatoes. And I go, yeah, we have the internet too, it turns out. Right? And we do. And, that was always something that came up. And so what we learned to do was to make people laugh with the comment that we have the internet too, but also to share that we were by Yellowstone, right? And that not only were we by Yellowstone, we had the opportunity to be near the Tetons. And if you ever want to come out and visit, we would love to have you. Well, the business started to take off and grow. By 2019, we had thousands of educators at that point that were using our platform. And we had our first ever user conference. We chose to host in West Yellowstone, Montana. And that was a great success. Over 100 professors were there in that room from all over the nation and from other countries as well. And for me, I was so proud of the fact that we brought them to us. Ignore that it's actually Montana up there, okay? But the Idaho area. And they flew into Idaho Falls. Professors would come in that wanted to be authors for our business. We'd had a few really big wins with some of our e-textbooks and simulations. And so new authors would come interested in working with us. And we would always try to take them to see some of the fun parts of Idaho as well as a part of the experience. That wasn't my job. I didn't get to go on a lot of those fun trips, but I always had a lunch that I was dedicated to attend with the potential author as a part of closing them to become an author for us. You know what would happen every time I sat down? Before I got very far into lunch, they would say, "How did you build such an incredible team? Everyone is so nice." And there were things that I did that I'm proud of that I think helped build a good culture. But you know what number one is? I chose to build my business in Idaho. It turns out people in Idaho are really friendly. They also work really hard. By the way, one of the things that I did do that was unique and different from, I think, a lot of businesses, we were up to 120 employees, and I had personally interviewed every single person that joined the team. My interview was not about whether the finance specialist could help us with and knew Excel well. It wasn't whether the software engineer knew how to code well. My job was the culture fit interview. The very last interview, we had a set of 7 core values. And I'd say, "Hey, have you been interviewed? And in the interview, did they bring up our core values? Which one's your favorite?" And if they couldn't say a favorite, that was like, well, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. But if they said that they didn't know our core values, if they got to my office and still hadn't paid close enough attention in their other interviews to our core values, it was one of two things. Hiring manager needs to be talked to about how important our core values are. They should be brought up in every interview. And two, if they don't know about them, then it's on them, right? It was either one of those two things. And so I would dive deeper and I'd say, okay, one of our core values is winning. Tell me why you value winning. And if it was a software engineer, you know what? They may say, well, for me, I'm not a very competitive person. I don't care whether I win or lose when we play family cards. I haven't won any trophies in life. I'm not that guy. I say, okay, but what does it look like for you when you're just killing it at life or in your job? Oh, well, at my last job, I did this. And I could learn pretty quickly if they actually had a winning mentality, if they actually valued winning, if they cared deeply for their work. And then I would move into other core values. Some of you may start falling asleep on me with this, but I'm telling you, this is secret sauce stuff. It sounds so easy. One of my favorite books is How to Win Friends and Influence People. And when you read that book, so many of the elements of the book, they just seem so common sense. I already knew that. But you know what? You could go read it again, and especially if you have and you haven't. If you've never read it, please put it on your list. If you have read it, and it's been years, I promise you that if you read that book back up, you'll go, oh, I knew that. But I don't do that anymore. See, sometimes we need those reminders, don't we? It's important that you keep building and growing yourself and your team. One of the things that I've been doing to build and grow again is finding new books with new authors on different subjects. There's an author that wrote a book called How to Make a Few $Billion. His name's Brad Jacobs, and he has 8 billion-dollar companies that he started. You know, I can sit at a lot of tables and tell my entrepreneurial story, and people are like, wow, that's awesome. Inc. 5000 list 10 times? Guys, I'm a nobody compared to Brad Jacobs, right? So by putting myself in front of a book and learning from someone like that, listening to his podcast where he's been interviewed, I'm able to learn and grow and bring things back to Idaho. Brad's not in Idaho. I never got to sit at a table with him here. That's one of the things I've done, and I've helped my company and the team members I've brought to the table do that as well. There's an ad that Melaleuca loves to run every Christmas. It's on the radio, and they say something to the effect of, I bet if I just stayed quiet, someone would go, oh yeah, I know which one you're talking about, because I have heard it for years. They talk about the fact that the greatest export from Idaho isn't potatoes. What is it? It's our people. My mom and dad are high school sweethearts from Blackfoot High. My dad couldn't find work that paid, and the job opportunities took him to the state of Washington. I had to grow up I had to go through the hard life of growing up in Washington. It was a great state too, rained a lot, never go back, but it was a good place to grow up. My wife, she grew up in Ohio. My in-laws are high school sweethearts from Bonneville High. Both Larry Draper and Richie Webb went and did outstanding things, but they couldn't do it. They couldn't build their careers here because there weren't people creating jobs and new opportunities for them where they could utilize the skills they and the things they were learning in college. Businesses can build and grow in Idaho, but you've got to choose to believe that you can do it here, and then you got to go all in on that investment. One of the things that actually made me think about leaving, and by the way, I had a guy on my podcast the other day, Rob Polecki. Washi is his startup. He used to be a politician in Boise, and in telling his story, he said, yeah, I was working on the business and trying to grow it, and I needed to fly more, and so I moved. He had left Boise, was living in Pocatello, and he's like, I decided I just needed to get closer to the Salt Lake City airport. And I thought, gosh, that hurts to hear. He was in Pocatello. There's a regional there. We have a regional in Idaho Falls. I swore the first couple years in my head a lot about the fact that I hated to make my drives to Salt Lake, but to afford the flights, that's what I chose to do. Eventually, I made a decision as a business that we would no longer fly out of Salt Lake unless we absolutely had to. We would always try to fly out of Idaho Falls. And the Idaho Falls airport has grown from 3 to 6 gates. It continues to grow and improve. They're making more. They have a bunch of additional budget set aside to keep growing and improving it. And I believe that as that grows and improves, it will make building business in Idaho better. By the way, when you add in the cost of wear and tear on your car, the chances of getting stuck in a snowstorm coming back from Salt Lake, the hotel when you're in Salt Lake, the parking when you're in Salt Lake, by the way, you're going to end up with a hotel either side of the trip most likely, because you're going to be either flying in too late to want to drive home or waking up too early if you leave here at 3 a.m. to go. Guys, the time savings, it ends up being better. I promise you the money, the $100 more, $150 more, you're not making up for it going to Salt Lake. So stop it and help us all be able to afford cheaper, better flights out of Idaho Falls, okay? I like some clapping and hearing that there. Okay, I mentioned that for us, we fly professors into Idaho. And we also fly out to go and be on campus with a lot of the schools with Stukent. What I've found is that it's really hard to grow a high-growth business in Idaho that only does business in Idaho. That's just my experience. There are others that have found enough demand for whatever they sell that they can make all of their money in Idaho. But Get Found First and Stukent, both of those businesses, they grew by finding ways to bring money into Idaho. And so when you say, get on a plane, the book Rework is one I recommend. Jason Fried wrote it. And in his book, he talks about how important it is when an opportunity arises, just go jump on it. What I told my sales team was, if you have a deal that will make you more money than the cost of the flight, and you want to make it, and you think you got a shot, then tell the professor, I'm going to be in your city in insert next month. What day would work for you for me to come by your office? And we would go and be with them. Being with them allowed us to bring their money here, okay? So as you are working with your teams, don't be afraid to, one, get on a plane yourself, and two, to push your team to not be afraid to go get on the road, because a part of how we will succeed in growing Idaho is being able to build more business here. Okay, I have something I want to do for a minute. You wear a lot of hats in entrepreneurship, right? When you start a business, when I started Get Found First, I was wearing all the hats. You're the janitor, you're the finance guy, which do not trust me with the finances. I'll spend all your money in a minute. Got to be really careful with that in my life, okay? But I did the hat wearing with Get Found First. Then I did the hat wearing with Stukent. What I found was in raising investor money, all of a sudden, I had an ability to pass hats off faster to smarter people than me. And so don't be shy and afraid of finding ways to finance your business. It's not right for everyone. A lot of businesses should be bootstrapped. If you're considering it or not, if you listen to my show, Startups with Stu, that's a place where I talk with a lot of different people about how they raised money, why they raised money, and with a lot of people that never needed it. So you're going to have to decide for yourself. For us with Stukent, raising money, you make money in September in an education technology business, and you make money in January. And I had to pay professional sales reps a salary with a promise of future commission as well for all those months leading up. So you'd talk to them in November, and they'd say, yeah, we'll buy. Next September, my students will pay you through the website, right? And so that's not an easy thing to stomach. It just meant I had to raise money. I had no choice. And what I learned was taking off hats, using that money to give the right smart people the hat was a game changer for me as an entrepreneur. I had built Get Found First. We hadn't done $1 million in sales yet. When I built Stukent and we did $1 million, then 2, then 4, then so on and so forth, it was a lot easier to run a $3 million company as compared to when Get Found First was a $300,000 company. You know why? I had money to give people hats. I wasn't carrying them all. Now, here I am back, okay? I got a new hat. I just started a company called National Parks Baseball Resort, and I'm planning to bring the Cooperstown of the East to Idaho Falls as National Parks Baseball Resort of the West. Yes, thank you. I'm excited to hear that there's some excitement in the room about that idea. Baseball teams will come from all over the nation to Idaho Falls. And today, the hat is big and heavy. It holds my big head. My wife had a lot of jokes about that. But the fact is, I can't do this one alone. And so I wanted to bring it up with you here and now so that you can be cranking your wheels on this thing for me. If for nothing else than just knowing that that's of value to me. If you want to take a second and go search up National Parks Baseball Resort on Instagram or Facebook, you can follow our story and hear about the process of getting things going. Instead of Field 1, it's going to be Zion Field. And instead of Field 20, it's going to be Mount Rainier Field and Yosemite Field. I'm excited about the concept. I think that families will come from all over because they already give up their whole summer for baseball to go to different parks, but they don't get to go to national parks as a part of it. And so to check off the bucket list items of saying, yeah, we finally got Johnny to Yellowstone, we made that happen, I think that's going to be a big part of the draw. So maybe if you walk away with nothing else from this, it's that renewed thought of like, hey, I actually do live in a really cool place, close to really amazing, like world-renowned destinations, and you can bring your potential customers here. And when you do, you'll wow them. Not just you, but your team will wow them as well. As for last ideas and thoughts for you, you got to find ways to stand out and not be afraid to stand out. By the way, great wrestling movie. I'm a wrestler. If you haven't seen the show Stand Out, the story of Ben Kerr, I highly recommend that you go watch that Utah boys wrestling story. It is an inspiration. Not a dry eye in the theater the time I went and saw. Don't apologize for promoting your business and pushing your brand. If you won't, guess who will? No one. As the leader of your business, if you choose not to be all in and willing to wear the brand, by the way, Brad Jacobs, when I the guy that wrote the book, How to Make a Few $1 Billion, billionaire, has 8 of them, gets on a podcast, and you know what he's got on his chest? His brand. He's not afraid to still promote what he does. I learned this from one of the guests that came to one of my Startups with Stu retreats. Rudy Rudiger, one of my heroes. And guess what? One of the greatest basketball players of all time, Kobe Bryant, says that Rudy was his greatest inspirational sports movie. What's so great about Rudy, you guys? I'm going to take this hat back off. It does get heavy. By the way, Noggin Boss makes these. I'm not sponsored, but if you want to have a fun hat to stand out with, now you know Noggin Boss makes those. And I bet you could get the cool folks at Vast Apparel to help you out with that. Support Idaho. Rudy, when he came and spoke, he doesn't really share the story of his life and what you can watch in the movie because he's already got the movie. Instead, what he shares is how he got to have a movie. And you know why that's so inspirational? Because all the bro did was get on the field for 2 plays his senior year. Think about that. You have an idea for a movie you want to have written about yourself. And you're going to go to a producer and say, hey, look, I played college football. I'd like you to write a movie. And they're like, yeah, you and thousands have played college football. What makes you special? Well, I actually wore the Notre Dame uniform. Yeah, but a lot of the guys wore the Notre Dame uniform. And Joe Montana wore the Notre Dame uniform. Yeah, but my story's special. What makes your story so special, Rudy? I got on the field 2 plays. I'm special. You know what they did? They laughed him out of the room. Notre Dame themselves did not sign up Rudy. They said, you can't use our campus to do your show. Did that stop Rudy? The same guy that fought so hard. If you've watched the movie, you've seen it. If you've never seen it, by the way, Rudy Rudiger's story is awesome, inspirational. You got to go check it out. What does this have to do with Idaho? I'll get there. Focusing on my story, okay? He kept believing in himself. He wanted the guys that wrote the script for Hoosiers to write his script. So those guys turned him down, ignored him a few times. Finally, one of the guys that wrote it was like, yeah, if you want, you can come out, fly out to California, I'll meet you for lunch. Rudy goes right to the restaurant the guy said he would meet him, waits, no show. Rudy walks out of that restaurant kind of upset and sad, and a mailman walks by, and he's whistling as he goes, and Rudy goes, hey, thank you for whistling. You just brightened my day. And that stopped the mailman, and was like, what? The mailman ended up becoming his friend. In that very moment, right then and there, because Rudy pushed out some positivity on a hard, sad moment for himself, that mailman went, who did you say you were trying to see? And he said the guy's name, and the mailman goes, I'm not supposed to do this, but I know where everyone lives because I drop off their mail. I'm going to take you to his house. That's how Rudy got the guy to believe in him to write the script for his show. He knocked on that guy's door, said, hey, we had an appointment. The guy goes, whoa, I'm sorry I didn't make it, man. And he's like, well, it doesn't matter. Here we are. You're going to write my movie. This has got to happen. Behind Rocky, Rudy is the most sold sports movie of all time. I don't know, maybe you could argue that Remember the Titans passed it. But I just love and admire Rudy. He unapologetically believes in himself and what he can go and do. You as business owners in Idaho, believe in yourselves and what you can do, like Frank Vandersloot of Melaleuca did, like J.R. Simplot of Simplot did. There are so many examples here in Idaho of really successful business leaders that built Idaho, that created jobs in Idaho so we quit exporting our kids to other states. Okay? Let's go and build Idaho. You can build big, high-growth businesses in Idaho. I'm a bit of a living proof of it, small compared to others, and I just hope that you know that I'm here to cheer for you more than you're going to cheer for me right now, that you can go make it happen. Thank you so much for having me today.